Hey, Browns fans, welcome on in to the Dog Check podcast, part of the Believe network of podcasts, also airing, of course, on Bally Sports Cleveland. I'm Spencer German. As you know, training camps rolling right along. Preseason's about to get rolling this week. We got the Hall of Fame game. It is an exciting time of year, and I'm excited to be joined this week by former Browns assistant coach under Bill Belichick back in the early 90s. Kevin Spencer joining us on the show. I appreciate his expertise as always. Kevin, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of time this week, man. Thank you.
Spence, thanks very much. I look forward to it very much to be able to talk some football with you.
I was going to say, the first thing I noticed about your appearance is that I'm still rocking the wired headphones, and you're clearly more tech savvy than me because you got the AirPods in. So I get made fun of by my friends. Listen, I'm telling you, man, I get texts from friends all the time who are like, "Dude, you got to lose the headphones with the cords on them," and I'm like, "That's just what's at my desk." So that's just what I roll with.
You got to roll with whatever works for you and what you feel comfortable with. So nobody much cares what it looks like as long as you like it.
I'll work on getting AirPods.
I was afraid if I didn't have like some set of earphones, you would have thrown me off the show when I showed up. But I texted Lindsay and said, "Are earbuds okay?" And she gave me the green light, so I'm good to go.
People are going to think you're the young one in this conversation, so it's all good.
If I could if they would disguise me for you, I'd be very pleased with that. You look wicked young. You have no, at least the darkness of this room is hiding my wrinkles, which I greatly appreciate.
Well, I appreciate that, Kevin. And I want to start, obviously, just training camp, obviously, opened up just a few days ago for the Browns specifically. And we can get into some specific topics about this team, of course, but I want to get your just perspective on what training camp is like from a coaching standpoint, and also I guess just like how it's changed over the years from when you were coaching in the NFL, specifically under Belichick, to what you kind of see play out now with these teams.
I think the biggest thing is that the changes that they've made to the NFLPA, where as a matter of fact, I'm helping out at Ignatius, and we were talking about the way practice used to be, and I was talking to our older coaches, and we would go like seriously anywhere from 18 to 20 practices, and those would be 2-a-days in full pads. So I think that that's the greatest change is the amount of time that you actually spend on the grass. And I'm not an advocating that. I think they've probably done some good things to help the health of the players. But I really do think that from the coaching perspective, you just don't ever feel like you have enough time with the guys. You're always up against the clock. I'm sure that they're doing the 1-a-days and then they have a walkthrough. I know you can't do 2 consecutive practices in pads. So I think the biggest change has just been the workload. So therefore, as a coach, usually you're just flying through the day. There's so many things you had to get accomplished and so many things to get done. So I think that's the biggest thing is that the workload has changed significantly for the players.
Do you have a favorite Bill Belichick training camp story that you can drop on us? Because we know, what Bill Belichick has become since those days, and everyone always looks back and they're like, "Oh man, we had maybe the greatest coach of all time or the greatest coach of all time here in Cleveland," and it didn't obviously work out just with when the team got moved and all that. So I'm curious, pre-Bill Belichick becoming Bill Belichick, what's maybe your favorite story from training camp with him?
I remember we had moved from Kirkland to Berea. I believe that was in '91. So, we're out practicing and it's a 2-a-day and, Bill has captivated everybody's imagination. So he's out there one day and you know how he would take his like rubber coaching top and cut it up and cut the sleeves, cut it at the neck. And so he comes out and he's got a long sleever on with the short sleever over it. So, he looks like a garbage bag and everybody's just looking at him, what in the world are you doing? So of course, I think Tony Grossi or some of the veteran reporters came up to him and said, Bill, what in the world are you doing? And he said that, and I found this to be greatly significant. He felt like wearing that garb would give him an indication of what it was like to be a player in full gear. He sensed the heat, the humidity, and I think that he used that as somewhat of a barometer, like how hard can we push the guys today? So I don't know how scientifically accurate that was, but it showed me that there isn't anything that he did that he didn't have a darn good reason to do it. And I just marveled at it, like, well, I guess I have to accept that you're wearing, you look like a a garbage bag, but you think that this is it's going to help you monitor the health of your players. And that, because he was a hardworking coach, came out of the Bill Parcells school, and those guys worked hard. And I think Bill was concerned about, let's get good work, but let's not push it to the point where we get the guys hurt.
Even back then, he was playing 3D chess. That's an awesome story. I like that a lot. That was exactly what I was hoping for. Give us something we didn't know or didn't necessarily hear before about Belichick, and you delivered. So I appreciate that story, Kevin.
Thank you.
I want to. We'll get into some specifics with players and things here in a second. But another big storyline from the start of training camp, from a Brown standpoint, has been just the daily happenings of Mike Vrabel, and you see him, racing, Jameis Winston, and doing some fun stuff and bringing some of that, I guess, like the positive vibes and the fun factor, I guess, to practice a little bit. But also, we know he's a guy who takes his job very seriously, and he's going to bring some really good expertise to this team. He talked a little bit about his role and how it won't necessarily be a lot on game days, but like week to week, he's in the building working with specific groups. Right now, you're seeing a lot of him, when the offense is trying to install stuff, he's kind of showing them a different look and, kind of showing you from a linebacker standpoint what a guy may be thinking or what a guy might do. And he's also working pretty closely with the tight ends. But just how valuable, Kevin, from your perspective, and again, with that coaching hat and that coaching lens that you have, how valuable will he be, you think, to the Browns this year, when not only do you already have some great minds like Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey and Jim Schwartz working on this team together, but now you throw into it a guy in Vrabel who's one of the most well-respected guys around the league in terms of a coaching standpoint, and he brings something to the table. Just how much of an impact do you think he's going to have this year on this team and bring to the table?
I think it's a huge, huge thing. And just watching the video of him running with the quarterback, I said, Mike Vrabel's having fun coaching football again. He's not wearing the head coaching hat where you're monitoring all the different schedules. You're in conjunction with the film people, the training room people, the equipment people. Maybe they're having you talk to outside people. He looks like he's just enjoying being a football coach. And I would go, he's not a particularly old coach in coaching, but I think he's probably a guy that's forgotten more than most people know. I think he's probably going to be a great advocate to Jim. Jim worked with him when Jimmy was down there at Tennessee, so he's going to have that connection with the defense. Coach Stefanski, I know sometimes they say it's lonely at the top, so he's got another guy that's been in those shoes and had to make certain decisions. And I think Kevin Stefanski is a confident enough man that he said, "Hey, Mike, what do you think about that?" And I think also it sounds like he's doing a lot of good things. I heard Coach Stefanski on the radio today saying he's really enjoyed Mike working with the offense. And I think that's maybe why Coach Belichick always thought was an excellent offensive mind, because he's a defensive guy. He knows what hurts offenses. And I think Coach Vrabel, being a guy with a defensive background, can probably lend just a ton of stuff to, this is, just techniques that can be used and strategies that can be used. So I just think it's a wonderful thing that he's there. And as I said, when I saw him running, I said, that's a man that looks like he loves coaching, and he missed it. And now he's got the opportunity to do it again. So it's a great thing to see. I mean, there's no ego there, believe me. He just wants to coach ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be nice to, take a step back a little bit and not have to have the pressures of the head coach kind of touted on you every single day. And you kind of just get to go do, what you love to do, which is coach football players and have fun doing it. So I'm sure that is a little bit of a relief for him. I want to pivot a little bit here to Deshaun Watson, which we know is a massive storyline here during training camp. Pretty much every throw he makes, people are hanging on to, people are watching and trying to, divulge any bit of information about how he's going to perform this year. Just what are your expectations for Deshaun Watson this year, especially when you consider the Browns for the second consecutive season are bringing in an offensive coordinator, or at least catering their offense to him? They said they did that last year with Alex Van Pelt and obviously Stefanski. Didn't quite work out, and then he got hurt. But specific to this year, when you have Ken Dorsey coming in and trying some different things and adding something to this offense, just what are your expectations for him going into year three with a lot of with obviously a lot of pressure on him to perform and live up to the trade that the Browns made for him?
I guess, Spencer, I always try to take the standpoint that the glass is half full. He's probably, I think what we forget sometimes, I mean, is that here's this quarterback who's making all this money and all the fanfare, but all of these guys are unbelievable competitors. I mean, if they're playing checkers, if you're playing cards in the locker room, they all want to win. And I really think that Deshaun's probably taking the attitude that enough's enough. You know, I got a little bit of I call it, it's not a chip on his shoulder. I use the expression he's got a 4x4 on his shoulder, because I really think he wants to prove to people that I am the guy, and I will show you why the Browns went to the extent to bring me on board. Because he's a competitor, he's a very proud guy. He's not a screaming, howl, rant, and rave. But I'm of the opinion that this guy, we're going to see the 2020 version. I know that the team at Houston had maybe I think it was a 4-12 record, but he had those unbelievable statistics, and I really think that's the guy we're going to see. I just think that hopefully he's got that laser focus. Hopefully, praying and hoping physically he's back. Every indication when you tell, and you're right, they're measuring spin rate on his balls, trying to is he spinning the ball the way he used to spin it. But I'm just going to take the up road on this one. I think that they've certainly put together a staff that is going to try and bring out those things that he did, maybe the Houston stuff, and I'm glad that they've done that. So I really feel good about this guy. And, we knock on wood. Let's pray and hope he doesn't stub a toe. But I really think he's going to show people, because he's a proud guy. And most of all, he's a competitive.
So you believe he's going to get back to the 2020 version of himself. But I'm curious, Kevin, like, especially, again, tapping into kind of your coaching lens here, how difficult, though, is it for a player to replicate something that he hasn't done in going on 4 years now? Because that is the big thing, right? Everyone's like, we haven't seen that version of Deshaun Watson now in nearly 4 years. How could he possibly get back to that? Like, that does seem like it would be difficult to kind of recapture this far removed from it. What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think no doubt, and I guess I'm probably swimming uphill, upstream. I'm swimming upstream here without a paddle. But and you're right. I just think that probably he's got to have that same mental mindset that he had before when he was playing. And I think, he had the off the field incidents and all the attention that drew. And I don't care if you're Superman, that's got to have a tremendous impact on your mental capabilities. So I'm just praying and hoping, and maybe he was in the position to do it last year. He just had those unfortunate injuries and bumped his shoulder up. And maybe he's going to be back physically. Just he's trained hard, he's healthy. So I guess I'm hoping that he can recreate some version of 2020, because his mind's right. Maybe he's enjoying football again, and maybe physically he feels good about what he's done. I'm sure he's had the best of trainers and and the medical staff there with the Browns. So I guess that's what I'm hanging my hat on. That he's just got to throw caution to the wind and just have fun playing football again, and get off to a good start. I know that it seems like the locker room is embracing him. Certainly, the coaching staff is supporting him by the moves they've made to bring in coaches to bring out his talent level. So you're right. Can he beat Father Time? I don't know, but I'm praying and hoping he does. And those are the reasons why.
Well,
I think
hey,
he's do it.
you talk about your coaching lens. You also got to have that. You got to put the positive spin on it. You got to believe in the guy if you were his coach. So I 100% get it. We're talking with Kevin Spencer, former Browns assistant coach during the Bill Belichick days in the early '90s. We appreciate him giving some time this week on the Dog Check, part of the Believe Network of podcasts, and of course, streaming weekly or airing weekly on Bally Sports Cleveland. One more thing on the Deshaun front, Kevin. Given what he's coming back from, the shoulder injury, do you think he should play during the preseason? Is that something you think is beneficial to him, or should they keep him in bubble wrap until the season starts?
Well, I think that I'm going to go on record saying I think he's got to play some, and I think he's got to play with the ones. I don't think there's any merit of putting him out there with the twos. I think he needs to go in there, because, Spencer, they always talk about how the speed of the game changes. Everyone's talking about, well, gosh, we're going into the playoffs, and it's really true that the speed of the game, the urgency of the game, it just improves dramatically. So he's got to get a little bit of a taste, I think, for the speed of the game. When he's got to get the ball out quickly, the timing with his receivers, and you're not going to get it as much. You're not going to get it in practice. You're not going to get it in training camp. Maybe when they have those joint practices, when they're working. But I still think that he's going to have the red shirt on because you don't want some zealous, rookie trying to make a name for himself, deplete Deshaun. But I really do think he has to play. I know the risk that you run, but hell, he could step out of the cold tub and fall flat on his back. That's the way I look at it. I think he's got to get something just so that he's out there and gets a feel for the game. So I don't know if you're ever going to recreate that, what he's going to feel in Dallas, but I think you got to do it. You have to do it some, and it's got to be with the ones. The ones are out, and he's out.
Again, going back to sort of your coaching hat here, is the do we like overrate how valuable the preseason is, or is it actually a valuable tool in terms of guys kind of getting up to speed? Because nowadays it does seem like there's a lot of teams that just say, hey, we're not gonna risk putting our starters out there. We're just gonna try to get to week one. And I think you see sometimes week one the product kind of suffers because of that, because that kind of is their preseason in a way. But is there some truth to the idea that the preseason does matter in terms of ramping guys up?
For me, I think, and I'm probably taking it from the special teams perspective. I think that, and even when I was kind of, you call me crazy, I was kind of upset when they went from 4 games to 3 games, because there were games where you're trying to figure out who the bottom 10
Yeah.
guys are on your roster. I mean, maybe I'm taking it from the perspective of the guys that I needed as a special teams coach, and I felt that sometimes guys all of a sudden show themselves in game 3 and game 4, like, holy smokes, this guy, it might be a valuable backup, and he's going to help us in the kicking game. I think you're looking at it from the perspective of, oh, we got to get the offense, we've got to get our ones ready to go, and I think probably you have to be somewhat careful about that you've already alluded to with Watson being in there. And probably you're right. That's maybe the reason why week 1 and 2 is not a little bit lackluster, because the guy, and it goes back even to the off-season programs. You're just not getting the time to coach
Yeah.
the guys as much. They're not on the grass very much. So they've kind of diluted the off-season. They've definitely diluted the preseason. I understand the ramifications of that. They might be going 17 weeks, and you got to take care of these guys. They got to be there to play the game. But I do think there's value in those 3 games to thoroughly evaluate your roster and probably get quality reps to your
If
ones.
you didn't like them going from 4 to 3 games, just wait till they go from 3 to 2 games here in the next couple of years, because the 18th season is coming.
Yeah, I know and I get it. Someone told me a long time ago, this is a player-driven environment, and it's probably true in all sports. And you have to take care of the players. No one's going to see Coach Stefanski stand on the sideline. They want to see Deshaun Watson out there with Amari Cooper, because
Yeah.
it's a player-driven league. And if you diminish the health and the quality of those guys, then you're not going to be selling tickets, and people are not going to have an interest. But I also understand, that's why we have to do this. We have to be somewhat careful with the guys, and we can't be like back in the old days, the way we used to coach football.
What are your thoughts on an 18-game season, by the way? Is it did you ever envision back when you were coaching that they would expand to a point where not only they added a 17th game, but they're also talking about adding an 18th game?
I guess I'm not shocked by it. I know that Mr. Goodell is not real happy with anytime an NFL product is out there, particularly in preseason. People aren't going to the games. You're playing your 3s and 4s, and so the people kind of banging on the quality of the experience. So I'm sure they want to take 2 of those preseason games and, hey, let's ramp it up and make it be. It's about money. Let's be honest, Spencer. I mean, it's money. I know whenever I hear the NFL say, "Hey, it's an NFL family," it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll buy that a little bit. This is about money. So I get why they're doing it. I just want the quality and the performance of the guys to be good, and I hope that they have to add that second bye week to try and give a bit of a break, because it's a marathon. It's a brutal marathon to get from September to Feb. Now it's going to be what, after President's Weekend or before President's Weekend.
I want to go to the opposite side of the football here. We've talked a lot about the offense, Deshaun, all that. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't get into the defense a little bit. We know how great Jim Schwartz is. He's talked about adding some different wrinkles this year and changing some things up just to disguise a little bit what they did from a year ago, which is obviously important. But I always like to say, Kevin, defenses oftentimes feel like bullpens in baseball to me, where year to year they can just be so different. Like you could be great one year, and then the next year maybe there's like 3 guys that were really good for you that just don't have it. How difficult is it to replicate the success of last season, you think, for this group? And do they have the capabilities of doing that again, especially given the schedule that they're playing, where they got some of these elite quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert? I don't want to leave anybody out, but given that schedule, it gets a little bit tougher too. Just what's your read on that side of the ball, and can they be as successful, or are you anticipating that they take maybe even just a little bit of a step back?
Well, I'm going to, I'm going to approach it the way I talk about the quarterback. I have
Yeah.
a lot of confidence in Jim
I
Schwartz.
can I say this.
He's talking about.
Of the two topics, I probably go into these both feeling like I have more confidence in Jim Schwartz helping the defense replicate what they did last year than I do Deshaun Watson replicating what he did in 2020. If that makes sense, Jim Schwartz is easy to trust. He's been doing it for years.
Well, to your point, we
Yeah.
haven't had a healthy Deshaun in the time that he's been with us, and it's really hard to get that sample size of what this guy's going to do. I think everybody talks about that second half of the Baltimore game, but that still was only the second half. He was playing with a busted shoulder. So I guess my first thing is that Jim had put in the foundation last year, and now I think he's adding on the structure. He's building the house right now, so I think he knows what the logical progression is. He's probably well aware because the opponents spent the entire offseason studying his film and studying our personnel. So you give credit to those guys, the offensive people that are preparing for him. They're going to have some wrinkles too. But I think Jim, talks about, I think he's going to have some change of pace stuff. He can't be throwing the fastball all the time. And I think that our personnel has improved. I think, excited to see about what our inside linebacking crew is going to be like. I know the secondary's done well. We've got depth in the D line. And I think, too, that I hope, and they probably do, the defense has got a little bit of a challenge this year. In addition to that, you've already alluded to the quality of the people that have to play. They didn't have a great away record, if my memory serves me correctly. And that Houston game, and you could talk about the quarterback throwing a couple of pick sixes,
Yeah.
but they really picked us apart. They really had some matchups that were well conceived that took advantage of this thing. Now I know we had the rookie safety in there, and they went after Newsom. So I think that this is a group that it sounds to me that that game still rings very closely in their memory now. So I think we're going to have a very motivated group. I'm sure Jim is going to make the next step. He's going to put that first story on top of the foundation, and they're going to get better. But the challenge, you're right. I'm telling you, any given Sunday, you could be playing the freaking Oakland Raiders, and it's going to be a dogfight. So you're right. The competition's going up, but I think
I
this
got
group's
two
going to be
more
able to
things
handle
for
it.
you. One's kind of a fun one. It'll put you on the spot maybe a little bit, but we'll have some fun with it here at the very end. I do want to get your thoughts, though, on, especially given that you coach special teams in the NFL under Belichick, and that was one of your specialties. What do you make of the new kickoff rule? And are you anticipating the uptick in scoring? I'm gonna be honest, Kevin. I'm a little bit skeptical. Not that I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's good that they're changing it up and they're trying something different, and that hopefully it does breed more scoring. But everyone's talking about it like every other kick is going to be a touchdown, and I'm like, I just don't think that's going to be true. But what are you anticipating for the new kickoff rule and what we're going to see from it this year?
Well, this I do know for the fact that defensive coordinators are not happy with this rule because I do believe that the starting points for
Yeah.
the offense is going to be significantly, yeah, I'll say significantly better. There's a heck of a lot of difference when you're going 1st and 10 from the 32 as 1st and 10 from the 22. So I think that just from watching the USF film, and granted, this is athletes that are not the same as our athletes, but the way this thing is constructed, that if you get a crack, it could go to the house. You're not having as many players covering that are at different levels. Where if they pop a level, there's other guys there or there are safeties there. So I think that I anticipate that there's going to be a lot of big plays that come out of this, and that as I said, there'll be some rule changes. I'm sure they're going to be making some adjustments, but I think it's just based on what I've seen in that USL stuff. I mean, their average starting point was above the 30-yard line. So as I said, defenses aren't going to like it, and I think there are going to be some big plays. They'll believe me, these coaches are pretty bright guys. They'll get this thing sorted out in preseason, studying it, seeing what other ideas that guys have, and I just like the fact that we now have two plays that are safer for the players. But we really truly have 6 phases of the special teams now because kickoff and kickoff return are more viable weapons.
All right,
to
last
take
thing for
advantage of.
you. We know Nick Chubb is everyone's monitoring the Nick Chubb situation and his return to the field. I'm sort of anticipating that he's not going to be ready week 1. But if Nick Chubb comes back from this injury and is able to get back to being the player that he used to be, is he solidified in the Browns Mount Rushmore, if you had to make a Mount Rushmore? Or is he maybe already on it for you? Because he is up there in terms of some of these records within the franchise, rushing-wise, and he is a fan favorite. But would that be enough, you think, to put him in the Browns Mount Rushmore?
Heck yeah.
Okay.
I think he's already there, Spencer.
So who's on it with Chubb then? It's Chubb.
I just think
I'm assuming Jim Brown's got to be on there. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Jim Brown has to be.
Joe Thomas?
Jim Brown has to be. Who the heck else? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that if Chubb's on yours already, we got one spot left.
How about – all right, here's a stretch. And this is a sentimental favorite.
Right.
How about Clay Matthews?
He's
a sentimental favorite
I think
for me.
Miles is making his case too. But
I just – maybe we'll make this – we'll have 5 people up there. But Nick Chubb is just like such a – I don't know how to describe him. You're so proud of him, the way he conducts his business, the way he does his business. I see some of those videos of his working out are just absolutely astounding to me. And he's doing this for the second time, and this time is worse. And so I just think that he gives us such a mental lift and such a great person in the locker room. I mean, you just got breathed the same air this guy's breathing.
Well, if that was true, then maybe I'd be playing in the NFL. But I've been around Nick Chubb enough at this point and breathed the same air that I'm not quite ready to make my NFL debut yet. But
yeah, but you have no wrinkles. You're a good-looking guy.
I'm on the wrong side of 30, Kevin, so I don't know if they'll pay me what I want to get paid.
All right, Doug. I can't remember
Kevin,
when I was 30.
I appreciate the time, man. Of course, Kevin Spencer, who was former Browns assistant coach. He coached during the Belichick era and here in Cleveland, and comes with some great stories, some great expertise on things. I always appreciate these conversations. I'm glad we got a chance to do this, man, on the Dog Check, and let's count on connecting again sometime and doing this again during the season.
Thank you so very much, Spencer. I know I constantly sending you text messages. When do I get my chance? When I get my chance? And you're very kind to allow me to visit with you.
No doubt. I knew the time would come. We just had to be a little bit patient with it, but I knew the time would come. That's right.
Well, hey, we got 2 great names.
A lot of Spencers. A lot of Spencers on the show.
It's just one's exactly.
All right.
Well,
that's all the time we have for you today. Again,
that's
we appreciate you jumping on in and listening to the Dog Check. We implore you to like, subscribe, review the show wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you like to listen. And, of course, you can find it weekly on Bally Sports Cleveland as well. We'll be back next week with a new episode of the Dog Check with plenty more to talk about as the Browns progress through training camp and get ready for their first preseason game against the Green Bay Packers on August 10th. Until then, though, appreciate you guys listening. And, as always, go Browns.